how do I do this thing? How do I live a healthy life in an unhealthy world?
Welcome to the most exciting adventure of your life. Welcome to a new way of living. Welcome to the Fierce Planet Adventures podcast.
Hi, I'm Casey.
And I'm Andy. And we're a married couple on a mission to inspire and guide 1 million people to live a life of purpose, passion, and self-mastery through the 5 mountains of cutting-edge development. In today's episode, we ask you to set aside your perception of normal and to borrow from Keenan, it's a message of hope for those who choose to hear it and a warning for those who do not.
Joining us today is author and podcast host, Pilar Gerasimo, an award-winning health journalist, pioneering social explorer, and author of a new book, The Healthy Deviant, a rule breaker's guide to being healthy in an unhealthy world. North Atlantic Books 2020. Best known for her work as founding editor of Experience Life magazine, which today reaches more than 3 million people with each issue, Pilar has also served as top health editor for the Huffington Post and is visiting faculty for the Institute for Integrative Nutrition. Today, Pilar co-hosts a top-rated podcast called The Living Experiment and teaches online courses through her digital learning platform, Healthy Deviant Academy. She guest lectures at universities, leads workshops at top retreat centers, and consults for organizations committing to transforming health and happiness at work and around the globe. When she's not traveling, Pilar hangs out on an organic communal family farm in Wisconsin with her pit bull pal, Calvin. Welcome, Pilar.
Thanks so much, Casey and Andrew. It's great to be here with you.
Absolutely. Thank you for taking the time to join us.
I'm really excited about today's podcast.
Yes.
This is great. So, wow, right? So much to discuss today. The Healthy Deviant, it shakes the foundations of what many of us think of as normal. And you ask your reader to rethink the very fabric of our lives and what we're told and sold as healthy, happy, and normal. You're right that, most of us, we're trying to play a game that's been rigged from the very beginning, right? And so what do you mean by that?
Well, I mean that when we come into this world, most of us are lucky in that we come in as reasonably healthy, happy babies. And then the world gets at us, right? We are affected by all of the different forces at work, from media and the systems of education and medical care, but also being surrounded by people who themselves are stressed out. We deal with traumas and stresses as the result of encountering people who have, become in some way oppressed or victimized by a pretty unhealthy culture. That culture that right now really encourages a lot more people to be unhealthy and unhappy, statistically speaking, than it does creating healthy, happy people. So when I say that the game is rigged from the beginning, I mean that you come in minding your own business as a little baby, just doing your own little natural baby thing. And the next thing you know, you're encouraged to adopt certain types of behaviors and patterns and rhythms of life, certain preferences for certain kinds of foods. You're told by advertising and media that you need to look and act a certain way and be a certain way and have certain things. And the more you comply with that version of what I call it, the crazy that passes for normal, the less healthy and less happy you get typically. And this is, again, speaking statistically, that right now, if you follow along with what passes for normal, you tend to get the so-called normal result. And right now, what passes for normal in the US is at least 50%, now closer to 60% of US adults being chronically ill, at least with one chronic disease having been diagnosed. 68 to 70% being significantly overweight, 70% taking prescription drugs on a daily or close to daily basis. And here's a really crazy number, 80%, this is before COVID, not thriving or flourishing mentally and emotionally. So having some form of anxiety, depression, mood or behavior challenges, cognitive problems. And that number climbed to 89% during COVID. And we started seeing all of the results of that, from suicidal behaviors and ideations to addictions to unhealthy risk-taking and so on, a lot of depression and anxiety. I mean, literally think about that, 89% of the population not thriving mentally and emotionally.
Wow, that's staggering.
It's staggering. And that's a rigged game, right? To me, it's like, okay, go along with what everyone else is doing. And then you'll get this as the result. So while you're busy trying to keep up with the Joneses and do all the things you think you have to do to be okay or normal or fit in, you're also going along with all of the things that will break you down. So my motto is break the rules or break yourself. You really only have that choice, because if you follow the rules, you're going to end up getting broken down by the systems at play.
Great. That's very powerful. And just thinking back as I was listening to the audio version of the book, which you narrate, by the way, correct?
That's right. Thank you for listening to the audiobook. It's on Audible.
Yeah,
awesome.
it was great. I found myself going back and forth between, my childhood and how my parents raised me. And, I think that they did the best they could. Right. And it's not an indictment of them by any means, but we were told that, if you do X, Y, and Z, you go to the doctor, you believe everything the doctor tells you, follow the science, that, everything's going to be okay. Well, looking at my own family history, there were some pretty severe health issues that came up for my grandparents, my parents, me. And we followed the rules, right? We did everything the doctor said we should do. We bought what the media or the advertisers told us would make us healthier and happier. And that truly is just not what's really happening, is it? If you've been listening to our podcast or following us on socials, it's probably no surprise to you that I've been dealing with back issues for many years. And I want to take a moment just to tell you about something that I found that's helped me with my flexibility and durability and mobility. And that's called Kokoro Yoga, somatic warrior training. It's not just yoga. It also includes Tai Chi, Qigong, visualization, meditation, and breathwork practices such as Fit Warrior, Fighting Warrior, which incorporates functional fitness and some martial arts movements. And it's been just a really great way for me to maintain some flexibility and durability as I move through our challenges when we go and do Spartan races and climb mountains. So if this sounds like it's something that could help you out, check it out. The link's in the show notes.
Well, here's the thing. Almost all of us were brought up in a society that had things like the USDA nutrition guidelines as a guiding measure for how to eat. We had, suggestions from the medical establishment about how to deal with our symptoms, things like migraines and headaches and digestive disorders. And most of the prescriptions that we've been given from so-called authoritative sources like that have proven to have really significant long-term downside effects. And by that, I mean that a lot of the recommendations we got from the USDA nutrition guidelines, for example, which were taught in school when I was in school, still are taught in school, which are used as the basis for what people are fed in institutions, from schools and prisons to old folks' homes and hospitals. A lot of those guidelines proved to be extremely problematic. They included, in retrospect, way too much advice to depend on carbohydrates and grains and to be afraid of fats and calories. They did not seem to really tend to steer people away from eating refined sugars or understand that not all oils and fats are created equal. And so we had a whole bunch of people going for low-fat diets and eating high carbohydrate diets. High carbohydrate, that's hard to say. And then the next thing you know, we had people with greater weight problems, greater issues with type 2 diabetes, and so on. So there's that. And then there's then you have the problem and you go to the doctor. Now I got a health issue, right? I can feel that my body's out of balance, or I'm getting pain and aches and problems and it's not operating right. I go to see a doctor, and the doctor has been educated relatively recently, in a medical school system where what that doctor was taught to think about was, how do I get this person out of pain as quickly as possible, typically with a prescription drug or a procedure, not let me figure out what the root cause of this person's health problems are, acknowledging that it could be their whole way of life, right? Not just one thing they're doing or eating, but they're living in an unhealthy culture, which is causing them to be inflamed and imbalanced and freaked out, a victim of what I call pissed off body syndrome, where your body is angry because it's not getting its needs met, it's not recovering. So now you've got a doctor giving you advice, which is basically take this pill or, follow some regimen that you probably aren't going to be able to follow because it's too difficult to change everything about your diet and exercise and sleep, even if you do have a doctor that's progressive enough to acknowledge that maybe your sleep, your stress, your food, your activity or lack thereof is part of the problem. Doctors aren't really educated to give good counsel, particularly around nutrition, where most medical doctors, get a few hours of nutrition education, most of it outdated, most of it not personalized, most of it not acknowledging how different genetic and, different phenotypes and genetic types are going to need different kinds of nutrition. Most of them don't know much about food intolerances. Most of them don't know much about autoimmune disorders that are triggered by ongoing stresses and inflammatory factors being unaddressed in the body. So when you look at people who in their minds have done everything quote unquote right, they followed the rules, they followed those prescriptions, but they're still seeing their health, their fitness, their happiness decline. And they're seeing the number of diagnosed conditions increase because there's a cascade that causes inflammation to produce a lot of different diseases. They're like, wait, and now I have another pill and another powder and another procedure I have to track. I need more scans. I need more checkups. Pretty soon, you are a ward of the healthcare system. You are in it. And even though you thought you were doing the things that you were supposed to do, you're not really healthy, and you can feel that. Even if your lab results are okay, you probably can feel you're fatigued, you're reactive, you have little weird niggling health problems that you can't get to the root of, rashes or pain and aches or just imbalances. So, a lot of what I talk about in my work, not just in the book, but in the podcast, which is called The Living Experiment, which I co-host with my friend Dallas Hartwig, is how do you go about being a healthy person in that unhealthy world? How do you go about avoiding becoming the victim of those sets of commonly produced prescriptions that not only don't work, but that they often make matters worse? And my biggest passion is helping people free themselves from a system that is breaking them down. And I think if anybody has been laboring under the effort of trying to get healthier and finding themselves trying and failing again, I would love to encourage you to approach it a bit differently. And I'm happy to offer some counsel on that. But I think we've got our health advice really messed up in this country, in this society, in Western society in general. And I'm making it my life mission to help people re-educate themselves and to trust their own bodies and minds about the feedback they're getting about whether something is working or not.
Yeah. What came up for me there as you're describing that is an experience, several experiences I've had with the healthcare system. And that is, for years, I went to the doctor with just general malaise, just different issues, never pinpointing quite what it was. And finally, I came across an integrative health provider who did some muscle testing as the means of one of the means of diagnosis. And it turns out that I had Lyme disease, which had been gone undiagnosed for a while, along with type 2 diabetes and also a gluten intolerance.
That'll do
so
it.
what a perfect storm right there of issues that my allopathic healthcare team just did not, dial in. They didn't connect to. And once we started eliminating those other issues or treating those specific issues, boy, my health just, got back on track. Energy levels went through the roof. Yeah. So that's just, I think, one example from my personal life and why your body of work has been so, it just resonated with me, right? It's like, yeah, I get that. That's my experience, at least
Andrew,
partially.
It's so great to have you say that because there's the second part of the book. There are 5 parts in the book. And the second part is called The Making of a Healthy Deviant, My Story and Yours. And I titled it that because what I've found is the story you just told is exactly the story that the vast majority of healthy deviants end up telling, which is that I started going downhill and, suddenly I realized I wasn't feeling well, right? It's called, I term those stages compliance and descent. So you begin in a natural state, you start complying, then you move into a descent phase where things suddenly are getting harder and you don't feel as well. And then you eventually will end up in this phase called darkness, which is like you start feeling really crappy and you're not able to get out of it. And the things that you're being told to do don't work. And then you fall in this next category I call divergence, where, like you, oftentimes people start by their own accord or on the advice of someone else, doing things a bit differently, using a different set of strategies or techniques that address their whole person health, their whole life health. It may be finding a chiropractor or an integrative or functional medicine physician who changes your way of eating. You go on an elimination diet and find out, oh, yes, gluten intolerance, or you get tested for some stuff like I have heavy metal poisoning, or I have Lyme disease, or I have mold toxicity. I have something that the conventional medical system wasn't finding, couldn't find, didn't have the tools or the perspectives to find. Or sometimes people just like light out on their own experiment, like they go on a Whole30, an autoimmune protocol or something like that. Or they move out of the house that they're in to a less toxic zone. And or they get out of a job that was making them completely sick, or a marriage that was making them completely sick. And lo and behold, they feel better. So that divergence phase often then leads to the next phase. This, not everyone gets here, but a lot of us do, which is rebellion. And this is typically a phase where you suddenly you've now started to feel better. And then you're like, wait a minute, why did nobody tell me this? Why did I have to suffer for 5 years or 10 years or longer before I found my way to this different way of being that does work for me, but that nobody would tell me about, or people would actually warn me away from and say, that's, crazy voodoo woo-woo stuff, or, don't do it. Just listen to this one doctor, not anything else. And then what I hope is that, and this is where, I think podcasts like yours and mine and all of the resources of people who are, I think, trying it a little differently, find their way to a more sustainable state, which is the one I call Healthy Deviance. And I call this whole journey the Healthy Deviant Hero's Journey, because it really follows a very similar construct to that monomythic story that is told, in everything from Star Wars to The Hobbit, the hero's journey of finding your way through a series of challenges to a higher level of being and of gratification and of meaning and purpose. And then bringing those gifts back, that stage called the return, is where you decide to share what you've learned, often the hard way, through your experience of that hero's journey. And you have such compassion for yourself and other people because you now realize it's not that people are stupid or have no self-discipline or are somehow flawed that's causing 99% of people to not be very healthy. It's the fact that we're living in a really impossible set of situations and we're having to learn. As I say in my book, we're the first generation in the history of humanity to be living in circumstances, modern day circumstances, even remotely like the ones we're living in now, with digital technologies and electric lights and all of the things that are, artificial intelligence, for example, an endless barrage of media pressures, new products and services being foisted on us all of the time, not enough time and space to do what we need to do to take care of ourselves, no communities to teach us or encourage us so that we can learn from each other. Everyone's out there trying to do it on their own. And I just feel like it's such a worthy effort, and it can feel so thankless when you're doing it by yourself and you feel like you're the only one who's having to experience this. So I think the more we share these stories of our own Healthy Deviant heroes' journeys and recognize how similar they are structurally to each other's, that we're not alone in this and that we do need to start declaring the truth of our reality for ourselves rather than allowing conventional health and fitness media to tell us who we should be and how we should do it, or having conventional medicine, which is great at acute issues. Believe me, if I break my arm, I'm going to go to the emergency room and have like a regular medical doctor deal with it, at least at first. But if I get hit by a car and I need to have surgery, I'm definitely going to be very happy for the Western medical system. It's good at acute stuff, not so much at chronic stuff, not so much at lifestyle-based problems, which are 90% of the health problems that are driving our healthcare costs and our healthcare crisis in this country.
Something that came up for me there, just being in the mindset of our society of constantly asking, what's wrong with me? And I think you kind of illustrate that pretty well. The first part of the book too is so many of us are out there asking, what's wrong with me? Where it's not actually what's wrong with me.
Yes.
What's being fed to us and sold to us.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah, what's wrong with me? That is the burning question that we are encouraged to ask. And in the book, I have an illustration that really references that. It sort of shows a little person looking at this bewildered right in front of this gigantic billboard. If you can imagine standing in front of a billboard sized sign, and you're about 3 feet away from it. All you can see is the billboard with like the sign says, "What is wrong with me?" question mark. And then it's got the litany, right, of your weight problem and your rash and your migraine and your anxiety and your issues and your debt and you got the long list. And all you can see is this board. But if you take 3 or 4 steps to the right and get beyond where that sign is blocking your view, what you can see is a whole, I say it's the forest for the trees problem. You can see beyond that first layer to what's producing the problems that you're experiencing. And those problems are really things mostly that are wildly out of our control or even out of our historic time zone. Like the fact that 2.5 million years of history, when humans were forming over 2.5 million years, they lived one way. And by that, I mean, really, they did not have a lot of technological change. At some point they got fire and eventually, the wheel came about. But it's like, we're talking about mostly hunter-gatherers living in small nomadic tribes, living in communities of support with very similar experiences. And for 2.5 million years, I could say, if I was a person alive 2 million years ago, my grandparents, great-grandparents, and great-great-grandparents all lived the same exact lifestyle that I did. They had the same stuff. They had the same skills. They lived the same way, eating pretty much all whole foods that we found and gathered, living in these little portable shelters, worried mostly about our day-to-day survival and figuring out how to take care of each other. That was reality for humans. What's important to remember is that period of 2.5 million years, that's the period where we formed the DNA that we have today. So what brought us into this condition that we are now experiencing of like, what's wrong with me, is the reality that over the last 10,000 years, which is like a relative like snap of the fingers in terms of human time, everything changed about 10,000 years ago when we had an agricultural revolution that produced domesticated plants and animals, allowed us to have surpluses, which then allowed us to specialize in what we did. And some people did some things and some people did other things, and craftsmanship and guilds came about. And people then began, not needing to grow or have their own food personally. They could get it from other places. And that developed a whole bunch of other things, including technological changes and specialties that produced then the Industrial Revolution of about a couple hundred years ago. And that's really when we first started having big machines that were able to process flours and sugars. They were able to mass-produced parts and pieces of things. And then we started accumulating more stuff and more processed foods. And lo and behold, then we had the technological revolution of about 60 years ago. And first computers, lots of appliances, push button things. And then the digital revolution, which is only 25 years ago, like less than half my lifetime, I've had these devices that we're still figuring out how to make sense of all of that. And so when we're forced to look at that billboard of what's wrong with me and not see that what we're actually experiencing is what's wrong with all of us, which is not really wrong with us at all. It's what's wrong is the experience of evolutionary mismatch. And that's a term that's used by biologists, evolutionary biologists, and others to describe what happens when DNA formed over a long period of time, like 2.5 million years, is suddenly thrust into an environment that has nothing to do with those circumstances. And so our modern day environment and our old hunter-gatherer DNA do not match. And that mismatch is really to blame, psychologically, physically, at every level, for the sense of dis-ease we experience, the sense of stress, anxiety, depression. That's what's causing the runaway epidemics of chronic disease like type 2 diabetes and heart disease. Not that people aren't following the right guidelines. It's that we're having to have guidelines at all. Like nobody in our history of humanity had to deal with guidelines. You just ate what there was. You didn't have paradox of choice. You didn't have things being promoted to you. You had time to go and find and prepare your food and eat it and enjoy it with people you loved. All of that has changed now. So I really think about it as us needing to re-educate ourselves in the new survival skills of the modern era. What do you need to do? Not like build fire, find shelter and water. That was the issue with our forebears of 2.5 million years. The modern day survival problems are, How do I maintain energy and focus to take care of myself, even in the face of a million distractions? How do I prepare myself to make healthier choices, even in the face of a ton of temptation and pressure and convenience says to do the other thing? How do I maintain my relationships and my home in ways that help support healthy choices? How do I recover from the endless stream of irritations and inflammations that result just from living in an unhealthy culture? So those are the technologies that I teach in my book, in my podcast, and in my courses. It's really like, how do I do this thing? How do I live a healthy life in an unhealthy world?
Friends, if what we're discussing today, the 5 domains of cutting edge human development, sounds interesting to you and you want to experience it for yourself, a great place to start is the Unbeatable Challenge. You can try it for free now. There's a link in the show notes, and it's a great way to really jumpstart your 5 domain training and become really clear on your goals for this year and how to crush them. We did this challenge earlier this year, and it was a great way to find clarity and redefine our mission, our purpose. And Casey and I also used it as an alignment piece in our marriage to make sure that we were on the same page. So the link is in the show notes. You can try it for free now. Don't wait. Don't hesitate. Take action. Yeah. What came to mind here is, and I don't want to hammer this point too much because I think at heart, I'm still a capitalist, but, we can literally be watching a show on making healthy decisions and exercise and fitness and eating well. And then at commercial break, we're seeing, the latest fast food commercial or the latest snack food commercial. So it seems like we're caught in this never-ending loop of do better. Here's how you can do better, and then we're going to tempt you with, the unhealthy choice. And it's like, well, no wonder why people are confused and aren't quite sure where to go and which direction to take to achieve the optimal health.
Yes. Well, and I think you don't have to be a devoted capitalist to make that observation, but I do think that living in a culture that has some base assumptions, which is, more is better. Products will solve the problem. You have a problem. Now that you have convinced you have a problem, here's a solution to it. Like, that's really how advertising works. That's how most media works. And today, most media is really owned effectively by the advertisers. So just to give you an example, I started a magazine in 2001 and ran it for the better part of 15 years. As you mentioned, Experience Life now reaches like 3 million people with each issue. I had to fight really, really hard for that magazine to be committed to the principle of serving the reader first, because most magazines are committed to the principle of serving the advertiser first. And they literally develop content that will be supportive of the ads that are going in, not the other way around. So when you as a reader are reading a health and fitness magazine produced by most conventional media companies, or you're watching television in a conventional realm, you can pretty much guarantee that a lot of what you're going to be seeing is designed to either catch your attention and keep you trapped in an environment like social media where you're going to continue to be able to see ads. You are the product, basically. You're being sold. Or you're going to be seeing a lot of material that convinces you need more stuff. A gear guide, a makeover thing, a weight loss how-to that's followed by an ad for a weight loss product or service. And it is really a setup that is, it is a form of propaganda or brainwashing or psyops that is very artfully done in this mass culture that we live in. Like, there's a lot of science behind how to get people to do and buy and behave in certain ways. So knowing that you're the target of that, you can continue to operate like a good consumer capitalist if you want to and get the things you want. I mean, here, I'll give you an example. A couple of years ago, I bought something called an Oura ring. Now, I'm not a shill for this ring and I'm not an affiliate, but I will tell you, it was one of a few product purchases that I made after I saw it advertised. Actually, I had a friend had it first, and then I saw it advertised. I'm sure I got tracked because I looked it up or something, right? Now I'm getting, you got to have this thing. And I will tell you, I actually like this product a lot. And it's cool and it's great, and yay technology and yay products are available. It helps me track my sleep, my activity, and a bunch of other things. Now, do I need this thing to be a healthy person in an unhealthy world? No, I do not need it. I can absolutely make the decisions I need to make without it. Is it helpful? On some occasions, yes. Is it worth the investment? Well, for me, I would say yes. But if I was on my last dime and I had to make the decision between buying a product like this or going and getting a healthy food to eat, I think it would be a terrible purchase decision to get a piece of technology. I would much rather see somebody buy a whole food and eat it and, take a nap and maybe meditate or do something that doesn't cost them a penny. The problem is that it isn't that simple. And we aren't that conscious about making these decisions. Most of the time, we're making our decisions from an inflamed, imbalanced, overwhelmed, exhausted, distracted, depleted state. That is the state we are in by default when we are living in our current reality. So I call our current reality the unhealthy default reality, the UDR. That means a society where the easy, automatic, promoted choices are usually unhealthy or less healthy choices. And making healthy, happy choices requires a feat of human effort, really. And it's not commonly done, which then makes it even harder because it's not what everyone else is doing. And the systems aren't set up to make it the default happy, healthy choice. The default is going to be one that robs you of your last resources, physical and financial and more. So I too, I'm happy to live in a capitalist society. I won't say that I think that it couldn't be improved. I mean, I think there's a conscious form of capitalism. In fact, that's a real thing. Conscious capitalism has a whole stakeholder model associated with it, where the success of business isn't limited to a short-term stockholders' profits. It's considers the impact on the environment, the community, the employees, the customers, the suppliers, and more. And when we really start to think about living sustainable lives in the long term will require businesses to begin rethinking how they're operating and what they think of as success. And I'm seeing encouraging signs on the horizon with more things like B Corps coming into being, and a lot more people who I think of been the top performing, employees or team members or leaders with inside companies saying, the more I think about it, the more I'm thinking this is for the birds. Like, I don't want to do this with my life energy. I don't want to just sell people more stuff or make them want things they don't need or convince them that they're flawed in order to get them to buy some gadget. I want to have a meaningful life. I want a sense of purpose. I want to feel good about what I do. And many of them are lighting out on interesting experiments like the one you are living, like, let's try this differently. Let's give ourselves a break from that. And I think that that's loosening things up in a way that will hopefully produce a better form of capitalism, a more responsible form of buying and selling more sustainable solutions to the real problems we're facing today. I often point out that, today's crises is tomorrow's growth sector. And I really believe that the problems we've created for ourselves, from excess weight and chronic disease to, toxic waste dumps that need cleaning up, or, climate change that needs to be addressed radically, these will be where the business opportunities of today and tomorrow lie. So anybody who wants to get into a growth sector really just needs to get on solving these problems for themselves and others.
Oh, I love it. There's no shortage of problems to be solved. Okay, so as consumers, as Americans, or as humans, we're constantly bombarded from all the different messages of do this, buy that, keep scrolling and clicking. How do you pause? How do you stop and just take a breath? I mean, how do you disconnect yourself from that, at least even just for a moment, to gain perspective?
Yeah. Well, so I have a methodology in my book. There's sort of 3 nonconformist competencies, I call them, and 3 renegade rituals, and they work together. The nonconformist competencies very quickly are amplified awareness, which is about noticing what the heck is going on with you, in you, and around you. One is called preemptive repair, and that's the art of getting ahead of the damage so that you don't get so distracted and depleted that you no longer know what you're doing and you're just sucked into that vortex of things that drain you. And then continuous growth and learning is the 3rd nonconformist competency. And that's about learning the skills and strategies that you need to have and keep on board in order to do this sustainably. Now, what happens in my experience, I don't know about you guys, I think you actually described it pretty well, Andrew, that you just end up finding yourself. Like, you wake up to the fact that you've been scrolling for minutes or hours that you weren't planning to, or you found yourself clicking in this rabbit hole that's taking you somewhere you just never intended to go that day. And that experience, in my mind, often triggers the like, okay, now how do I get out of this? Which is the question you asked me. What I want to do is encourage people to think about what actually happened before that. What happened in the 2 hours leading up to this moment where you found yourself depleted, distracted, feeling overwhelmed, wondering how I got here? Usually what happened is that sometime in the last 2 hours, you crossed a line of not having eaten healthy food when you needed it, so your blood sugar got low, or you crossed the line by not having rested when you needed a break. And so you started losing cognitive capacity, or you found yourself stressed out by a series of endless Zoom meetings or an encounter with someone that made you upset. And rather than actually having time to process all of the stress of that, you just kept going. And now you've run into this cycle of chronic depletion. Psychologists call it ego depletion. And it just means you've depleted the part of yourself that can make executive decisions. This part of you that is conscious and awake and makes decisions in your own best interest has basically gotten diminished or gone offline because you haven't done the basic things you need to do to build yourself back up. So by the time you find yourself in that rabbit hole, it's really important to notice that this did not happen magically. This happened because you didn't get a chance to do or failed to take action on a bunch of preemptive repair. Remember, that's the second nonconformist competency of Healthy Deviants, preemptively getting ahead of the damage that's done to you by virtue of just living in the unhealthy default reality. Because if you start out on your day without a plan to take a series of breaks that allow you to recover from the periods of high productivity and high focus and high demand, guaranteed, I can tell you, you are going to be a mess by mid-afternoon. You're probably going to be pretty depleted even by noon, where most people then skip having a lunch break when they desperately need one. And they spend the rest of the day on a downward slide into inflammation and distraction, and they just don't operate. They're not functioning well. So when I say preemptive repair, what I suggest people do, whether they, let's say you wake up and you're in that rabbit hole of like, I've lost my mind, I'm stressed out, I'm distracted, I don't even know what I'm doing, I can't focus. Acknowledge that you probably missed a step and now take corrective action. So how do you get yourself out? By doing the exact thing you should, I wish that you had done 2 hours ago or longer. Typically, you have to give yourself a break from the demands of the daily experience. By that, I mean, you really have to rescind yourself from the demands of mass culture society. So whether that means taking a walk around the block and getting some fresh air, unplugging from your devices is really essential. You cannot take a break while also being online. I just don't believe it's possible. Maybe if you're listening to a guided meditation or something, but if it's demanding your effort visually and auditorially and mentally, it's not a break. So I believe in unplugging and taking what I call an ultradian rhythm break. And this is one of the 3 nonconformist competencies in the book. What you do is really up to you. It could be meditation or breathing or yoga. It could be a walk. It could be getting a healthy snack. It could be lying down on the floor and just like letting your mind wander. It could look out the window, playing with a pet, playing a musical instrument, anything that you find relaxing and pleasurable and rejuvenating. But you really need to take your active brain offline and give your body a change of scenery or a change of gears. By that, I mean, let's say you're an office person, you're working in an office, you've been sitting on your butt for the last 6 hours or whatever. Anything longer than an hour and a half is way too long. You need to get up and move around, maybe up and down the halls or staircases or outside in the parking lot, maybe take a walk down the block and come back. If you are a FedEx delivery person and you've been up and down, in and out of the truck all day long, moving boxes, your break is going to be the shift of gears towards stillness or quietude or relaxation, letting your body recover from all of the demands of that. So taking a shift of gears and taking a shift of environment is often enough, as long as you're not still plugged into something, to let your body recover. And people who try this, like, this is too simple to work. And then they do it and they're like, oh my God, how have I not been doing this? Like, I feel like a different person. That's what I hear. And then teams who do this at work are like, I cannot believe our productivity has just gone through the roof. Like, and we're not yelling at each other. And I like my job again. So the power of taking these breaks, they're called ultradian rhythm breaks. We did a whole podcast episode on it. And I have a bunch of articles. If you search on ultradian, which is like ultradian, meaning ultra many, day, times during the day. Many times during the day, you're meant to take a break, ultradian rhythm breaks. I did an article that is an excerpt of my book, actually, that showed up at the Blue Zones website. And that's a really good kind of compendium of the basic stuff you need to know about ultradian rhythm breaks, including a bunch of graphics that explain how this sort of undulating rhythm of up and downs works throughout the day. If you think about it, it's almost like mini circadian rhythms. You know how you sleep at night and you're active during the day? It's like that, but shrunk down. So it happens many times during the day. So what you do, to me, there are very complex, arcane processes that a lot of people tell you to go through. Breathing a certain, you got to do pranayama breathing, and you have to sit a certain way and get your kundalini stuff all lined up. That's all great technology, and great. But all you really need to do initially to experience the benefit of this is stop doing what you've been doing for the last couple of hours. Refill yourself, replenish yourself, get away from the demands, and notice what your body is calling for. Is it thirsty? Is it really hungry? You might be hungry. You might need to go to the bathroom. You might just be needing some fresh air or a friendly face instead of the glaring screen. If you listen to your body, it will tell you what it needs during that time.
Wonderful. Thank you. Yeah. So the Healthy Deviant Manifesto, is that what you just touched on, or is that different than what you just mentioned?
Oh, well, I'm glad you asked. The Healthy Deviant Manifesto is funny. It becomes kind of an afterthought in the book. Everything in the book is based on the manifesto, but the manifesto is just sort of a 3-point summary of what I see as being the essential requirements or principles of being a healthy deviant. And it's actually very short. If you'd like to, I'd be happy to just share it with you. Would that work?
Yeah, that'd be wonderful.
Okay. 3-point Healthy Deviant Manifesto.
This episode of Fierce Planet Adventures podcast is brought to you by 5 Mountain Coaching, licensed unbeatable mind coaching, integrated accelerated vertical growth across 5 domains of cutting-edge development, designed by retired Navy SEAL Commander Mark Devine. Learn the big 4 skills of mental toughness and resiliency. Discover the 6 pillars of performance. Test your mettle with custom-created crucibles across all 5 domains. Visit 5mountaincoaching.com to schedule your free 1-hour unbeatable mind coaching session. That's the number 5, mountaincoaching.com. Begin your journey to becoming unbeatable today.
3-point Healthy Deviant Manifesto. Point number 1, subvert the unhealthy default reality. And by that, I mean, dare to make disruptive, healthy choices daily, even or especially in the face of resistance. Ask for what you want. Stand up for your health-preserving rights and preferences. Keep your wits about you and refuse to let the dominant culture machine roll over your healthy autonomy. So I'll just say one word about that. As I said, the unhealthy default reality is the society we're living in now. And by disrupting it, just by choosing to live differently, you're disrupting it. When you actively decide to make your health and happiness and well-being and resilience a priority, you are going to be messing with a set of systems that have been messing with you for a while. So that's point number 1, subvert the unhealthy default reality. Point number 2 is call out the crazy. Point to our society's unhealthy madness so others can start seeing it too. Speak up for the healthy truths you hold to be self-evident. Laugh in the face of nonsense, even when it's official, authoritative nonsense. When you see body shaming, bad advice, or unrealistic, quote unquote, aspirational imagery that you think is daft, say so. Wave your fist, roll your eyes, let off steam. Then get back to your own healthy deviant business. So in this point, what I'm really encouraging people to do is be overt. Once you start noticing the things that you mentioned, Andrew, like all of these things, you're like, God, I see that this is happening this way, and I'm seeing that it's not working. Share that with other people. You're not the only one experiencing the crazy, but when we talk to each other about it and point it out and make fun of it in some cases, I think we pull the power plug on it a little bit. It also makes us not feel so alone. Just a tiny example of this. I was standing at the supermarket in line at where they have the magazine racks. And there was just one of these magazines with a ridiculous bikini body lady and some stupid headline like lose the muffin top or get these thighs in 30 days or whatever it was. And I looked at the lady next to me and I was just like, I rolled my eyes and pointed to it. And she's like, oh my God, another one of those. And that was it. That was my version of calling out the crazy that day. So point number 2, call out the crazy. Point number 3, make it a party. Welcome, support, and seek common ground with health seekers of all stripes. Seek and form healthy deviant communities. See healthy living as an opportunity for growth, discovery, and self-expression, not a grim battle or competition. Enjoy the process. Make healthy living a fun, celebratory, open-hearted, inclusive gathering that everybody wants to join. And this last point is important to me because I feel like I spent so much of my life as a health seeker being convinced that it was all about self-discipline and self-denial, and I had to do it a certain way. And some people were right and other people were wrong. It was like the vegans versus the paleos versus the high carb versus the low carb. People who were at CrossFit who didn't like people that weren't at CrossFit. And I just got tired of feeling like I had to choose a clique. And I got tired of feeling like it had to be a miserable slog. So my whole philosophy is like, if I want people to have such a good time being healthy that everybody looks at you and are like, I want what she's having. I want it to be a place everybody can feel comfortable experimenting to find out what works for them. I really don't believe there's any one right way to be healthy. And I really do believe that all of the ways can be fun if they feel good to you. And you find some other people who want to have a good time, either the same or differently than you, but can hang out with you and support the way you're choosing to take care of yourself. Because if we don't make it a more fun, feel-good enterprise, I just don't see how we're going to solve the problem. We can't just keep sending more people to doctors that give them more pills and powders. And eventually they end up, in a surgical unit, getting something amputated or having a stent or a piece of mesh put in to deal with a problem that could have been resolved, years and years earlier if that person had gotten support in living a more sustainably healthy, more gratifying, satisfying, fun way of life. So point number 3, make it a party. That's it. That's the manifesto in a nutshell.
Oh, brilliant. I love it. That's what we do here, right? Is, all about changing people's perspectives and having fun with what you're doing. And we found ourselves in a very similar position where we worked for a great company that was in theory about having fun and getting outdoors, but it wasn't landing with us anymore, right? It didn't speak to us anymore. And so we did a paradigm shift and, getting outdoors and living a full life of adventure and fun, and incorporated with that is making healthy choices to sustain that lifestyle. So that really resonates with me.
That's great. Well, and I want to really commend you guys for, being on the cutting edge and a vanguard of experimentation. I think a lot of people, I have a group called Healthy Deviant U, which is an ongoing year-long program that people sign up for and hang together in a community for a year at least. Some people are going to be staying a lot longer than that. But what I'm seeing as a pattern with this sort of initial group of about 100 people is that many of them are reconsidering their career choices. They're reconsidering the way that they're living day to day. They're, living in a world that requires a lot of upkeep financially and physically to manage all their objects and their homes or whatever. And so whether people have very little money and are feeling like they're not undercompensated for the amount of life energy they're putting into their career, or they're very well compensated financially, but it's costing their jobs and their careers are costing them their health and their happiness and their relationships and their freedom. Many people are really reevaluating how they want to live. And I think we're seeing a resurgence of interest in what's called voluntary simplicity, which was a movement in the early 90s that started, where people are asking, do I want to give away this much of my life energy in exchange for money and power and clout or fame? Or do I really just want to have a day-to-day experience of being alive, doing what I choose to do, even if it means there are going to be some trade-offs. It's all about your value system. I really believe you have to kind of tap into the deepest callings of your soul first, and then figure out how to heed them. Because, I think so much of what I see in the planet that we're living on now is, it's a limited size planet with a limited set of natural resources. And we've sort of spent the first few hundred years of so-called modern existence, like post-industrial existence, living lives that required huge amounts of extraction of natural resources and of human resources. We extracted beyond people's ability to sustain it, their energy and their vitality and enthusiasm, and used it to create unsustainable models. Now I think we're waking up to the fact that it's like, I don't want to be an extractive industry, either as a business or as a person. I don't want to extract my own life energy out of myself just to support the way that I'm being told to live on a day-to-day basis. So I think that wake up call is coming at almost every level right now. And I'm reasonably optimistic that as creative people, we're going to figure out new and different ways of living. And I do believe, while the last year of pandemic and civil unrest and disturbance of many various kinds was kind of scary and confronting, I do believe that there's some real advantages in the fact that we had so much disruption that nobody's life was untouched by it. And I really think now we're having a global experience. We get to design what the new so-called normal is. I don't think anybody wants to go back to the old normal. And I don't think that even whatever someone else is telling you the new normal is, you should listen to. I think each of us individually has to feel into our own bones and say, how do I want to live? What feels good to me, honestly?
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah. It wasn't something that really resonated with me there. Like you were saying, it wasn't until we really slowed down and took a pause and really started searching deep within ourselves and what really did actually matter to us in our lives. What were our values, our principles, our passions, and ultimately leading to the purpose. And just being able to tap into that changes your perspective on a lot of other things.
Yes.
So,
yes, that's right. Yeah, well, you guys are a living experiment. I mean, we all are. That's the fun part. And I do think that slowing down is so, I don't know, Casey, the way you said that was really nice, that it's not until you slow down that you can begin to think, feel, and think clearly and notice. That amplified awareness, which is the very first nonconformist competency, doesn't usually come because people are thinking faster. Amplified awareness usually becomes because they are slowing down. They are willing themselves to cease active movement and grasping and begin noticing instead. And that is a courageous act. It's a revolutionary act. It's a healthy deviant act, for sure.
Oh, great. You've provided so much incredible information and perspective here. Is there anything you haven't touched on yet that you want people to be able to take away from your book?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, I'll say this, the book is a good 300 pages long, so there's lots of stuff in the book. I encourage people when they're reading the book to not feel that they have to read it cover to cover. I designed the book so that you could open it and start reading almost anywhere and just listen to your gut and instinct about what feels good. Same thing with the audiobook. I encourage people to skip around if they want to. So I always assume people will get out of the book what they want and need. I would encourage people who are interested and want to check it out. There's a free preview of the book that's available at my website. If you go to healthydeviant.com, you can find a preview of the book. You can find a whole bunch of other resources in the Learn More section, including articles and podcasts that are related to the topic. And then I have courses that I teach, small scale 5-day Healthy Deviant Challenge, which people can find for free at the Healthy Deviant Facebook group. And then other courses that I teach at various points throughout the year, kind of meeting people where they are. I guess that's where the thought I would love to leave you with is whether or not any one individual identifies themselves currently as a healthy deviant, or even really cares to know what that term means. What I really encourage people to do is just decide for themselves that their vitality and resilience and autonomy matter enough that they want to be in that at least a healthier version of their own selves, that they're willing to stand up for their rights to be a healthy, happy person and reclaim the sense of autonomy that they have. Their birthright is health, and to get back to that and make it a priority. That reminds me. So if you're wondering, are you a healthy deviant? I have a quiz, the Are You a Healthy Deviant quiz. And you can also find that it's free at healthydeviant.com. Just click on the quiz button that'll either pop up or is in the menu, and you can check that out. It gives you your score and tells you where you fall on the healthy deviant spectrum. And it also gives you some suggestions about how to interpret your score and what might be coming for you next.
Yeah, I took the quiz. It was very fun.
Oh, did you remember your
Information.
score? What were you?
Oh, gosh.
I bet you're a healthy deviant.
I was. I just can't remember the actual number score. But
It doesn't matter. Well, welcome to the club. Let's make it a party.
Thank you. Party. And tell us about the real quick, the Healthy Deviant Adventure.
Oh yeah. So I have in the book, part 4, I think it is called the Healthy Deviant Adventure. And it's a 14-day program that walks you through integrating the nonconformist competencies and the renegade rituals in ways that feel right for you. So each day for 14 days, there's a little reading, there's a little quote, a little reading that gives you kind of a philosophical idea of a theme, like, start where you are, or get ready for weirdness, or, basically like embracing things like courage and dealing with the challenges that you're facing. So it gives you suggested experiments that you can run or try during that day and encourages you to reflect on how that went. And I have an interactive version of that that's a video course, basically. I ran it for the first time online in the first 2 weeks of the COVID shutdown last year. And it was so funny. Like, everyone was going to be home for 2 weeks. And we thought it turned out to be a lot longer than that. But remember, it was like shut down for 14 days initially. And I was like, well, hey, I got a 14-day program. People need help. I got the stuff. I'm just going to go give this away. So we ran it for free online. And if anybody in your audience is interested in taking it, I would be very happy to give you a code that they can use and a link to take the first week for free. It's like the phase 1 of the program is for 7 days.
Awesome.
So I'll send that your way. And if you want to add it into your show notes or make it available to them on your list, you're welcome to do that.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, gosh, we want to be respectful of your time, and certainly thank you so much for joining us today, providing such a paradigm-breaking perspective, basically, on health and happiness. So,
thank you.
Was there anywhere else folks can go to learn more about you? Instagram or?
Yeah, I'm on all of the social platforms, believe it or not. I try not to spend a ton of time there, but I'm active on social media in Facebook and on Instagram and even Pinterest if you want to go there. But mostly I hang out on Instagram and Facebook. And Facebook, like I said, I have a couple of different pages and groups. There's a Healthy Deviant page, which is where I just kind of post stuff generally. The Healthy Deviant group is a closed group, private group. You have to request to join. A couple thousand people there right now, maybe 2,500. And that's a really fun community. I encourage people who are really interested in, going deeper with this stuff to connect with me there. I often give people free previews of the work I'm doing with online courses and things. So I would connect with me there. My personal site is pilargerasimo.com, but it's more about the background, and it contains links to the podcast, Living Experiment. That's one other option for folks that are podcast listeners who like your podcast. They might like ours too. Livingexperiment.com is where you find out about that, but it's available on all of the leading podcast platforms. So if you just search on Living Experiment, you'll find it.
Perfect. And we'll have some links in the show notes as well to get folks over to you.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for having me. It's really been fun talking with you.
Likewise. Yeah. And the book, congratulations on that. And
thank you.
What an amazing work, and just
mind blowing. Oh, thank you.
Fantastic.
Well, I spent about 5 years working on it, and I'm really proud of it. And it's been fun, that the year that this book came out, being COVID obsessed, wasn't the best year for a book to come out, but I have to say it's been so great to see it consistently reaching people, consistently selling, consistently getting shared. And now I'm getting invited to talk at schools and in universities and in businesses. And I just did a presentation for the International Monetary Fund and the World Economic Forum. So I think the potential for Healthy Deviants entering mainstream consciousness is real and now, and may more minds be blown.
Oh, right.
We need that.
And just as a quick statement here is, friends, we have just scratched the surface of the wealth of information provided in the book. So I really encourage you to listen to the audio version or download your copy. It's great.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that.